Fisherman King. There was once a fisherman who lived in a comfortable hut by the sea. The weather was warm in his land, and the sea was always a brilliant blue. The fisherman was happy. He grew food in his garden and fished from the sea. Some fish he sold, and some he ate. He liked nothing better than to sit in his garden overlooking the sea and sip his wine and strum his guitar and watch the sun set over the waves. Who could want for anything more? He would muse contentedly. One day, while dreamily casting his net in the water, he found his net so heavy that he could scarcely pull it up. "Have I caught a whale?" he said in alarm. But when at last he heaved the net aboard the boat, he found the largest fish he had ever seen, with scales that shone pure gold in the sunlight. And most amazing of all was a crown of gold and pearls upon its head. As if this wasn't enough, the fish then spoke in a voice both cultured and breathless, for it was clearly gasping for life in the hot sun. "Dear fisherman, I beg of you, throw me back in the ocean, for I am the king of these waters, and if I am no more in my kingdom, the sea will soon turn barren. Please, fisherman, throw me back to my home, and I promise you I will grant whatever wish you can dream of." The fisherman wasted no time in extracting the fish from his net, throwing him back in the water, for he was clearly an enchanted being and deserved the utmost respect. The fish soon appeared above the waves and thanked the fisherman. "And what wish can I grant you for your kindness?" The fisherman said he could think of nothing that he was wanting for. "Very wise," said the fish. "But if you change your mind, you may call on me at any time." And saying this, he dived back down and disappeared into the vast sea. Now the fisherman went home feeling content and happy and whistling a merry tune. When he got home, one of his neighbors came by for a visit and asked what had put him in such jolly spirits. "Oh, it is the strangest, most unique day I've had out on the sea. You've never heard a tale such as this." And he relayed the story of catching the Fish King. But when he finished, his neighbor mocked him, saying, "What a silly fool of a man you are! Was there ever a greater fool than you? You could have wished for a palace of gold, and you opt instead to keep things as they are." The fisherman felt very embarrassed and foolish, and vowed that the next day he would show his neighbor a thing or two. And indeed, the following morning he went out on his boat and called, "King of the fish, king of the sea, I have a wish to ask from thee." The king of the fish rose up from the waves, his crown all shining in the morning sun. "Anything you wish shall be granted, my friend." "Well, I want my hut to be transformed into a palace of pure gold." "Go home and see it is as you wish." And the fisherman went home to find his hut transformed into a palace of pure gold. Of course, his neighbors were quite astounded, and he invited everyone near and far to come and celebrate, and there was much merrymaking within the walls of the gold palace and in the beautiful gardens surrounding it. The fisherman was praised by all as the most generous and joyous host, except by the neighbor who had first mocked him. He had always felt secretly jealous of how happy and content the fisherman always was, and now he felt even more jealous of his good fortune. "Well, this has been a fine time, I'm sure, but you are still a fool in my book," he said to the fisherman, all the time feigning as if it was all in friendly jest. "How so?" asked the fisherman, who had always believed this friend to be far more clever than himself. "It's all fine and good to have a palace, but if you have no power to go with it, a king without a crown is like a bull without horns." The fisherman again felt very foolish, and vowed he would show his neighbor that he was not half so dim as he made him out to be. So the following morning he again went out on his boat and called, "King of the fish, king of the sea, I have a wish to ask from thee." And the Fish King rose out from the waves, which were troubled and gray. "Anything you wish shall be granted, my friend. I wish for a crown of gold to go with my palace. Well, I wish to be king, king of the whole land." "Go home and see it is as you wish." The fishermen returned to the palace to find a great crowd gathered in front. "3 cheers for our new king," they cried. The fishermen decreed that no work should be done for the next 3 days in order that all of the land could devote themselves to merrymaking. For a time, things were quite pleasant. But soon, the people of the land, who had done very well before without a king, began to ask questions of their new leader. "This man has stolen from me. What is his punishment to be? The neighboring land has much richer soil. Shall we take their land and make it our own? The almanac says we will have no rain this summer. What then shall we do?" And to these questions the fisherman found he had no answer. His jealous neighbor, seeing an opportunity to cause further mischief, said, "Don't you see, you are troubled by these problems because they are really very trifling, very provincial. If I were you, I would have wished to be emperor of the whole world. Then you would only have to raise your hand and say stop, and these people would have no recourse but to stop." So the poor fisherman went back to the sea and called, "King of the fish, king of the sea, I have a wish to wish from thee." The fish again rose above the waters, which were now black and tumultuous. "What can I do for you this time?" the fish asked. "I wish to be emperor of the world," said the fisherman. "Very well, it is so," said the fish. The fisherman returned to the palace to find an enormous multitude of people who were all crying out different woes and complaints. "Stop," the fisherman said, but no one even heard him. The people began to fight amongst each other. The children began to cry. And the fisherman yelled at the top of his lungs for everyone to stop, but by this time no one could hear each other above the riot. At last someone said, "It's him! He's to blame for all of this!" And the crowd turned and began to chase the fisher emperor. They chased him to the edge of a high cliff overlooking a furiously stormy sea. The poor fisherman saw no hope for his life and leapt from the cliff, crying, "I wish I had never made any wishes!" And, at that, he found himself back in front of his hut by the sea. The water was calm. The sky was blue. The fisherman took a deep, grateful breath. He saw his guitar was lying next to him and picked it up and played a little song. Some of his neighbors came by with some sweet wine. They watched the sunset together. The fisherman sighed happily. "Who could want for anything more?" said he. Well, the sun's gone down here, and I hope you all have a good night.